Have you ever noticed that sometimes it's hard to tell the truth? Sometimes it's just hard to tell the truth. I mean, if you ask any culture in the world, any religion in the world, just take your pick, they will say, yeah, you should tell the truth. It's an important thing, right? I mean, we say this to our children when they're growing up. Tell the truth. And yet, sometimes it's hard, right? I mean, if we go to court tomorrow and put your hand on a Bible, I promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. But sometimes it's hard to tell the truth, and sometimes it's hard to hear the truth. And yet, pretty much every culture that's lasted over time is built on the fact that people are, to some extent at least, honest. They are. Think about this, like imagine you have a coworker who has a new outfit, and his or her outfit is, how do we say, not real flattering. You say, what do you think of my outfit? It's nice, right? Or you go to a Christmas party and your Aunt Barbara brings a green Jell-O mold with marshmallows and said, what do you think of my green Jell-O mold? And you're like, it's green. Right? I mean, so we don't want to hurt their feelings. But we kind of want to be honest too. And so sometimes we kind of play with the truth a little bit, right, in order to be charitable. And this is part of the Christian life. But it's also part of the Christian life to be honest and hear honesty too. And a lot of people, they're just not real good at that, right? Because maybe we don't like confrontation, maybe we're not comfortable with it, but sometimes we have to be honest. Truth is very important. People have an amazing capacity to hear what they want to hear and to bend the truth according to what they want it to be. So imagine Nazi Germany, right? In the 1930s, as many of you know, in Germany, they were coming out of the Great Depression, 50% unemployment rate. People were starving, and along comes their Messiah, Adolf Hitler. He says, look, I'm going to restore the Reich. It'll be 1,000 years. This whole thing of these killing these innocent people, just turn a blind eye to that. Like, yes. They wanted to believe it. They bought right into it, hook, line, and sinker. That's why the Allies made the Germans bury the bodies of the Jews years later. You know, on the other side of Europe, in Great Britain at the time, the exact same time, in July of 1941, there was a cryptologist. His name was Dr. Alan Turing. Has anybody ever heard of him? Dr. Alan Turing. What did he decode? Anybody know? The Enigma machine, the Nazi Enigma machine, which they said could never be done. Dr. Alan Turing, in July of 1941, decoded the Nazi Enigma machine. The British government said that one man's work, one man, could possibly have saved the lives of 15 million people and decreased the war by 2 years. And he got zero credit when he was alive. It wasn't until after he died they really gave him credit. So his team of cryptologists, they were getting together and they're saying, well, I think it's this. And this is my opinion. And I think it's this. And Dr. Turing was like, I don't care what you think and what your opinion is. I don't care. What are the facts? That's what we're going for here. What are the facts, the objective truth? He kept bringing them back to it. They'd go away and bring them back. That's how it is with truth. There's objective truth and what we subjectively want it to be or bend it to be. You don't have to be Lance Armstrong to do that. Here's the deal, folks. We're going to be happier people when we bring our lives into the objective truth of what is right and wrong. We just are. We've all been there. I mean, I know myself. I know some of the mistakes I've made in life. Maybe it's not that bad. No. We can bend it according to our ego. Anybody ever heard the term social plagiarism? What is social plagiarism? It's when you take somebody's words and you use it against them later in a totally different context. My spouse said this 20 years ago, and I'm still using it, only I'm taking it out of context to use it against them. You ever heard the term slander of silence? What is slander of silence? You ever been sitting around with someone? You're sitting around with them and they're gossiping about somebody, right? Going back and forth, back and forth. And in your conscience, you're thinking, I should probably say something, redirect the conversation, or better yet, just get up and walk away. But what do we do? Nothing. And by doing nothing, we contribute to something. It's called slander. If you think I'm making any of this up, I'm not. This is in Catholic teaching. So for us, we say, this is truth. And by God, I'm going to try to live by it. Truth brings freedom. It's a fundamental principle in the spiritual life. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. You want to find life? You want to find freedom? You want to find happiness? Come to me and live in it. So in Matthew chapter 26, we have this scene, which is in several of the other Gospels, of the betrayal of Jesus by Judas Iscariot. And when Judas goes to Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, he uses two words. He says, "Hail, Rabbi." So he's, on the one hand, saying one thing, but on the other hand, he's totally doing something else. He's betraying him with a kiss. And we can do this, right? This is what we call being what? Two-faced. How are you doing? It's so good to see you. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to see you. And they leave. Man, I can't stand that person. All right? Did you see his bald head? I mean, right? Oh, it's so good to see you. I love you. Yeah. Please don't sit next to me. Right? This is how we are a lot of times, right? So for us, what we're trying to do is to have one person. That's authenticity, yeah? And trust me, you want to bring people into Christianity, you want to keep your peeps in the faith, be an authentic parent. Doesn't mean you have to be perfect. We're not perfect. None of us are perfect. But be authentic. It's the greatest catechesis, boy, let me tell you. It's interesting. For each one of us, we remember that there's objective truth and subjectively what we may want it to be. But we're going to be happier when we bring that subjectivity, that subjective truth, into the objective truth of moral truth. There are some facts that we cannot deny. 1 + 1 is 2. Gravity exists. Water is H2O. Some bacteria will make you sick. Well, I don't believe bacteria is going to make me sick. You tell that to Louis Pasteur, okay? There are some facts, but often when it comes to what we think, we reject that. In other words, what's going on with me and how I rationalize things. But the truth about truth is that truth makes you happy, even though it's not always easy to hear. Here's a question. Maybe you can help me with this. What is the difference between morals and ethics? Anybody know? What is the difference between morals or morality and ethics? I feel like Alex Trebek, right? In brief, it's this. There's crossover, but in brief, it's this. Ethics is how we relate to other people. It's external. Okay, so for those of you in the medical community, you would agree. There's a moral code of ethics that we have at work. Those in the legal community, you know you have this attorney-client privilege. As a priest, if I hear something in the confessional and say it, you know what's interesting? If I say something that I've heard in the confessional to another person, I'm not only not a priest anymore, I'm not even Catholic. That's how serious it is. There's ethics, and then there's morals. What is morals? Morals is internal. So that's why when you and I do something, or we lie, it stings our conscience. We have shame or guilt, and it stings our conscience. Whereas a lie not only impacts ethics, how we relate to other people. I lied to this person. It also stings our conscience. Dude, you shouldn't do that. So for each one of us, the challenge is to bring it front and center, to be brutally honest and said, I should not have done that, honey. I am sorry. Be patient with me. No problem. That's honesty. That's authenticity. That's what we're working on. And as time goes on, that's how we get to be a better human being. And I'll close with this. So every January, I think about this guy, and I'm probably the only Catholic that thinks about him, Pope Gregory the 13th. Does anybody ever heard of him? Okay. You ever heard of the popes? Okay. So I'm sure I'm the only Catholic in the world that thinks of Gregory the 13th. Yes, I'm a nerd. So if you've never heard of him, just a little history, Pope Gregory the 13th. He lived in the 16th century. And in the year 1582, this pope changed the way that the world operates. What did he do? He came up with this thing we call the Gregorian calendar, which 99% of the world uses today. Pope Gregory came up with the Gregorian calendar. Up until that point, they used what's called the Julian calendar from Julius Caesar. What was the problem with that? Well, it was off. As the time had gone on, it got a little off and a little off and a little off and a little off. And by the time the 16th century rolled around, it was way off. So you know how the Pope solved this problem? In March of 1582, he erased 10 days off the calendar. Just erased it. So imagine an analogy would be like this. Imagine you go to bed tonight and you wake up tomorrow morning and it's January 22nd. That's what happened. Just erased it, right? To get it back in line. Why did he do this? Why did he do this? Well, it wasn't like the Pope had a strong cup of coffee and said, I got a great idea. Let's just stir things up a little bit, right? No. Why did he do this? Because of the planetary systems, what's called the vernal equinox. And especially as time went on, the Easter itself was out of line with this, right? So the Pope, my point with this, is the Pope was changing the calendar of the world to coincide with the calendar of the planetary systems, outside of his opinion. Father, where are you going with this? This is where I'm telling you this. Because when you and I lie, it's a little like following the Julian calendar. As time goes on, we get further and further and further from where we started out. When we remain in the truth, it's like following the Gregorian calendar. We get grounded in something that is objectively true and real and honest and authentic. I am the way and the truth and the life. Come to me and you will find freedom.